Good morning. Welcome back. This is Daybreak on Citizen Television. Thank you for staying with us. The hashtag on Twitter is Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422 at Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. Your feedback is in. We'll sample towards the tail end of this broadcast, and we thank you for your company here on the broadcast. Gabriel, the head of state, also had a very segmented, about 22 pages speech yesterday. Let's now turn our attention to the issue that he first spoke about when he took to the Lactan at the Moi Stadium in the county of Embu. And he said that the discourse around our politics is changing from an ethnic-based discord to issue and policy-based discord. And this is the echo from what the Jubilee Party had promised in 2016 when the party was formed, to end ethnic balkanization, correct, unify the country based on principles and policies, and that party will outlive the leaders. But today that is not the exact reality, and the president seems to be again speaking on the same. He was very instrumental in the formation of the party then. I mean, in your view then, what guarantees and assurances are attached to this for the UDA party and by extension the Kenya Kwanza Alliance to outlive William Ruto, the president?
Thank you. You see, when Jubilee was, and I'll take you back a few years ago, when Jubilee was coming into formation, you may recall we saw a very strong hand of now the current president, William Ruto. Back then when he was the deputy president, he pushed for, let me call it a big party that had deep core values and principles away from smaller parties which we call mums and puffs, where Javas wakes up today and goes registers a party, and his cousin is a secretary, his uncle is a chairman. That's what he was trying to run away from. And he said, we need to have major parties that are run on sound principles and party doctrines, that you can wake up one morning and choose to enter into a party based on what they believe in. And in turn, that party is strongly founded on great ideas of development, change, and transformation. Now, I told you earlier on, we like giving examples of parties that have become transformative in other jurisdictions. And there are so many, Ayub, if you choose to pick. I told somebody when Jubilee was formed, they were all over in South Africa to look and learn, to benchmark on how ANC started and how they run.
They even sent officials to China.
Do you remember? They went all the way to the Communist Party of China to learn how that party is administered. So I can believe there was true intention, only that at some point somebody wanted that party to crumble. And when push came to shove, it exactly did that. Now, the president has started again on that particular journey because he knows and he believes in what a grand party can do and what that particular party is able to do. When you have a party that has a national outlook, what you're telling people is that we need to run away from these small, ethnic balkanized as parties, where you have roughly 1,000 people and you want to make a mark, yet there's no national outlook in it. What he was trying to say is we need, or we have come of age to have parties that are grounded, parties that are founded on very serious, subjective policies that will have Kenyans demand transformation. So that, I think, to me, is a principle that we all need to buy.
Okay, the principle mentioned, Gabriel, but the challenge is that the establishment in this country, political, that's what I'm talking about, seem in many aspects feed from the same trough when it comes to some issues. The structures, the principles are well laid out in the political party system. The officials are picked in a manner that is impressive in terms of meeting the threshold as needed. Correct. But the challenge is continuity. There seems to be a focus on, on the party in its very new stage, but at some point,
to fizzle.
Issues that
the
comes in and causes disenfranchisement.
The problem has not been the fizzling out. The problem has been ownership. Who owns that party? That has always been our problem. Because somebody feels, if, for instance, Javas is one who, and I'm glad to be, today I'm meeting Javas. Let me use actually Motier. If we say Motier is one who registered this party, and he has a number of people, yet, yes, they can be, we can allow them to be party founders, but they should not be party owners. And more so, when that party gets to a threshold where it's receiving money from the taxpayer, we expect something different. That is why you look into the Democratic Party of the United States. You look into the ANC of South Africa. Did it have people who are founders? Yes, it did. Are they the same owners today? No. And to me, that has been the major problem. You feel since you registered this party, it belongs to you. It should not be that way. Let the party belong to the people based on the ideologies that it preaches. That, to me, is the true genius of having a grand party. I am joining your party, not because you're telling me to join. No, okay. I am joining it because I know the kind of transformative agenda it has for me and the future generations. Okay. That should be the clarion call for most of us joining.
And the degree of association.
Correct.
Come to you, Dr. Yes.
Yeah, thank you. I think that has been a huge debate for us here as a country, and I think I've been here on this set since 2016, 2015, and still speaking of the same issue about ethnicized nature of our political parties in the country. And I also go back to at the policy level where what are the mechanisms of allowing the small parties to thrive in the country? Well, we can say we have expanded democratic avenues in this country as compared to yesteryears, which is something which I take as a positive gain for us as a country. But again, we are also seeing a situation where we have this, flourishing of these political parties. Everybody, as Gabriel has said, anybody can just walk in there and open a political party, whether they call it a briefcase party or they call whichever name, but these are small fragmentations of political parties which may not make a lot of sense when it comes to party disciplines and the political party disciplines. And I'm saying this because when you look at the nature of our ethnicized political parties, the way they are done. When you look at Wiper, you see Kalonzo Musyoka, Akamba. When you look at ODM, you see a Luo political party. When you see, UDA, somehow better, it's trying, but you still see a Kalenjin, driven political party, and so on and so on. How do we, gravitate from that kind of quagmire to have that kind of solid, sense of pillars, political party sense of pillars, which a sense of national unity for this country? Like when you go to the US, of course, he has talked about the Republicans and the Democrats. When you go to NC, South Africa is there. You go to India, you see the BJP party. And these are parties which have withstood all the terrains, all the personalities, and they thrive at a situation where we divorce the personalities heading those political parties to ideologies, to policy level, to issues-based politics. And that's why they really motivate and they really take all the people up on board. So moving forward as a country, as much as we want to chest thump that we have given freedom to everybody to do whatever they want, right. But at the electoral policy level, to me, I think we need to tie the strings and ensure that the threshold of having a political party, operating a political party for a certain period, to me, I think it should be pegged on other factors such as the numbers, the phase of the country, and so on and so on. Because for you to go to the office of the registrar of political parties to have a party, it's just a matter of a day or maybe a two, just few requirements here and there. In terms of numbers, I'm saying that we need to widen the number in terms of the requirement to fasten those loose ends and ensure that...
Are you proposing we have lesser parties?
Association parties? Not really lesser, but to ensure that we have parties which are able to have a reflection of the country in terms of multitudes, in terms of followership, and so on and so on, and in terms of ideology as well. Because when you have, I don't know, that's the signatures required to have a political party are very few. You just need to show that you have, some few, fellows or colleagues around you, and you are good to go. But if it were made in a way that you have to show that you are a serious political party, and then that's the only way you can be given the go ahead. Yes.
Javas, then at what point do we push or press the button of going beyond the personalization of political parties in Kenya? Because you look at PNU off after Kibaki.
Yeah.
ODM in the aftermath of Katiba referendum in 2005, Chungwa Ndizi, 18 years inexistent, but the nucleus of that party is Raila Amolo Odinga, and even MPs in the party tell you that ODM is Raila Odinga and Raila Odinga is ODM. You look at the Jubilee Party, fizzled out after the second term of President Uhuru Kenyatta's term in 2017. And now we have President William Ruto, who is promising that this will outlive. Some even quoting UDA MPs, Joseph Kamado of Kanu the late, who said that they will rule, this party will be in existence for more than 100 years. I mean, to what extent can that be a reality?
Well, I think we haven't come to a point where we are ready to, cross the Rubicon when it comes to sustaining political parties as critical institutions of democracy. And I say this because we have not realized that the vertebral column of political parties should be the ideology that is the founding factor. Today, the ideology is actually the founding partners. And that is, I think, our Achilles heel. That is what leads to the demise of all these political parties upon the exit of the personified founder. Because parties in this country, of course, like I've said earlier, take after the character and the charisma of the founder. And that is the misfortune we find ourselves in. Because most of the time, the selfish interests of the founder are the carcinogenic tumors and elements that are within our political parties. So I think we need to come to a point where we are saying that this party can help us move from point A to Z. Today, there are a number of people in South Africa that my brother Gabriel has cited here, who are in ANC because of what ANC spoke to during the time of apartheid. Independence. Correct. Yeah, moving from apartheid, getting into independence. They are still stuck there because they are glued to the dream of the ANC, not the persons. Because if it was about the persons upon the exit of Mandela, then they would have exited en masse. Now, I am also encouraged by the very legendary speech by Thabo Mbeki titled, "I am an African." What are these critical things that make us Africans, that should drive us, to make us grounded about critical things that should be significant to us, and not the persona of political leaders, because they will exit the stage. And that's why I remember even, I think during his either last Madaraka Day speech or Jamhuri speech, when he was offering an apology to Kenyans after 24 years in power, President Moi said, people should ask themselves, if you're in KANU, why are you in KANU? What is driving you to this party? But we don't ask ourselves these questions. And that's why when I reflect on the remarks of the president yesterday on the issue of the growth and transformation of our democracy, I look at the centrality of manifestos all these years. And I remember even at some point, Professor Anyang' Nyong'o said, and that at the time he was in SDP, saying that he wrote one of the most fine manifestos which has been copy-pasted over the years by other parties. Do people mean it when they write these manifestos, for example, in the run-up to the elections? For example, another thing is, do Kenyans ask critical questions about these manifestos? And the president went on to speak about the last election being issue-driven. I heard President Ruto, as he then was deputy president and candidate, talking about the issues of technology and the issues of enterprise, and I'm seeing him follow through. Okay. I heard Raila Odinga, as candidate at the time, talking about the issue of the social welfare and the 6,000 shillings. And I think it was good that we're talking about issues, not how previous elections have been. Yeah. Now today, for example, when we're talking about affordable housing, and I'm talking about democracy here on a growth trajectory through our political parties as enablers. When you look at the issue of housing, now do you know that, for instance, 36 years now, the issue of affordable housing has been critical to the developing world and the entire world. Today, as I'm speaking, 4 million people in the world need affordable housing because of population growth and commensurate deficits. 150 million people in the developing world are in need of affordable housing. Here I'm not even counting the homeless persons.
Okay.
And when you look at the census 2019 of Kenya, you realize that the issue of housing is critical, and we need to find ourselves discussing these issues, and as discussants of issues of critical importance or public interest, it behooves us to cut through the haze of disinformation and misinformation that is on the political space right now. I have taken time personally in this affordable housing thing, to go, for example, to the Pangani Affordable Housing Project.
Okay.
And I realized that, for example, I learned even from the developers that that space initially occupied 48 houses. Today, they've got 1,562 houses developed through that project. Just imagine. And you realize that that's just one project. Then there is the Starehe. I think when we discuss these issues, it should not be for populism and grandeur, just for the sake of earning debating points and scoring political points. It must not be about that. Question is, for example, is housing, affordable housing for that matter, a necessity in this country today? If that is the question, that question is not necessary, because indeed we need affordable housing. Today, there are far too many people in Kenya who have moved to informal settlements and some to slums after the COVID-19 and the resultant economic challenges. Many other people have moved to the countryside. We are not even discussing that. What were the trigger factors for people to move? Political parties should be discussing these issues, and that's why I'm talking about ideology.
Okay.
Without ideological-driven political parties, then we find ourselves in a challenge. And that's why I think I want to get encouraged by the words of George W. Bush in his inaugural speech in 2001, 20th January, 2005, 20th January. He said that difficulties of a task must not dissuade us from pursuing those ones. And even Mitt Romney, though I'm not Republican, I'm Democrat-leaning, in his very important book titled No Apology, he says that there comes a time when a leader must make critical decisions, difficult decisions, for the sake of the people. And that's why, with a great example, the affordable healthcare in the US, and as it was being pushed by President Obama, it was not an easy decision.
Of course.
But look at how beneficial it has been, because of the party ideology and the vision of a leader.
And it took him to make a convincing speech at the Congress.
Yes, of course it did.
And the preparation for that was quite very evident in his tell-all book before he left the White House in 2017. He talks about how he reached out to Republican senators to push that.
To woo them.
And painting a larger picture. And Gabriel, to you on that, one of the key cornerstone of this country is the Constitution 2010. And yesterday the president acknowledged the power it bestowed upon the Kenyan people. And he acknowledged the debate in the country at the moment about the finance bill and by extension the housing fund, which he said is giving us many answers. Some are skeptic about it, others are supporting it, and more or less referring to what's happening before the Finance and National Planning Committee of the National Assembly. To what degree or scale has the Constitution 2010 empowered the Kenyan populace to be heard and their decision taken into consideration, their opinions and views, by the ruling establishment?
Another great question. You know, one thing I noted, and I noted with a lot of concern, Jabas, is that even with a very progressive constitution like the one we have, ignorance is still speaking to the hearts of men. And nowadays, it can be understood at some point when we have or we are living in an environment where we are calling the manner in which we are able to access information in our fingertips, and yet many people still are ignorant. I look, Ayub, at how people have bashed things that have been meant to bring progress and transformation. Not because they are bad in a sense that they will not work, or they are delegitimizing them because they know for sure they are not good for Kenyans, but it's because it is an idea coming from somebody they perceive as a political enemy. I'll tell you this. Somebody once said that it can be understood for one person to remain out of the know because they choose to. And it can further be understood that you have information in front of you which you choose not to look into. What cannot be excused is for you to really decampaign something which you understand to be good, but you're pushing it to an environment where you want to disinform people. Hence why they say arrogance and ignorance at this dispensation is coming out of choice. Because you now have to be that you do not have any other choice for somebody to come and lie to you. When you have all these things in your fingertip, you can access this knowledge. So here I say, we have a very great constitution that we promulgated. In it, it gives us the ability to question our leaders, as we should. In it, it gives us the freedom to be part and parcel of decision-making in that it allows public participation. Yes, but what it does not allow sometimes is actually you putting up your hand, not only chastising, but abusing the other person just because they've come with a grand idea. I think that in itself is really pushing the boundaries of what we call freedoms. So I think, Ayub, where we are left today, ending this morning, is to look at what the president has put forward. And I was looking at this finance bill with people who sometimes who don't even believe in it. I will shock you, Ayub, what people told me yesterday. One person came out to me and told me.
In Embu County?
Yes.
Okay. Shocked
me. Came out and told us, but you know, the reason why I don't like this bill is that it will allow government to see the balance of my M-Pesa. And he's saying it with a seriousness of somebody who told him that that is what this finance bill signifies. What people have actually taken a backseat to misinform, they are not going to tell you that you have 20 tax deductions and some that have been removed from that finance bill. Many people will not tell you that. That is why I am telling you, Ayub, people need to read that finance bill and allow it to speak to them in the sophisticates of our times.
Okay.
Because what it's portending is, as a people, we must make a decision, and a hard one. Okay. And this is where many people, myself included, are not actually at this point, we are looking at our leader and our president, William Ruto, with those eyes of, this is a very hard decision that you're making. But it is a good decision because it's not comfortable. Guess what? Because if it was a comfortable decision, very quickly, any person can make it. And leaders, true leaders, are known by some of the hardest decisions that they make.
I'll come to Javas, I'll come to Dr. But Gabriel, one of the most pressing part of that finance bill issues, and one largely informs the other. It's the holding part of the chain. It's the strongest part of the chain, which informs the other. For example, the increment in the value-added tax of petroleum products from 8% to 16%. I mean, when you lessen that of LPG, it has to move from point A to point B for that gas to reach the house of the Kenyan people that you talked about. And that cost of logistics and transport is pushed to the consumer, which is a concern for them. For example, for the housing fund, they are concerned about the management of that fund, the legal framework. It won't end in a consolidated fund, according to Charles Singer, the PS for Housing, but there are questions as to its destination and who will manage it and the legal framework around it. And these are very critical questions that the president appreciated yesterday, and they need answers to it.
I'm not saying we should not question. Neither am I saying that we should be blind to some of the things that we feel are uncomfortable. What you've just said, somebody, we were looking with somebody on this one, very few people will tell you that 8% VAT on gas has been removed. And yet we are saying, we are really complaining that when the president talked about gas, Javas, do you know what actually he started pointing at? The Mtungi. That's what we did. I had somebody in their good clamor saying that, you know what, in this finance bill, per diem will be taxed. Per diem. Remember, Daktari, per diem is not an income. How do you tax it? So the misinformation is too much. And I feel sometimes sorry for the proponents of this finance bill that people want to really water it down based on what they are hearing, not really what it portends. For instance, the housing. Now, this, Ayub, this one you have to listen, because I know for sure even these guys don't know. Javas has talked about Pangani. I went there, found this young man who was telling me, you won't believe, this time I've been here, I came in as a mtu wa mkono, totally. Right now, I'm a welder. On-job training. He is doing welding and doing it very well. A profession that he did not have when he came in. So you can imagine, replicate that one person in nearly most of the developments in Nairobi. What does that tell you? That you will have people who will come to work, the 5 million that we are talking about, in terms of jobs that will be created in that housing sector, and probably more, who will come with a certain level of training and leave with a very upskilled training. Things that they only saw but came to learn them on the job.
All right.
You can never learn these things in class. That somebody who came as a mtu wa mkono, probably a bricklayer, today is leaving that facility, going to another one, as somebody who can weld and weld very well.
Okay, the employment, I appreciate it.
So
and the president talked about it.
You look at
but
this thing
the flip end is where Kenyans are most concerned about. And that's the management of the funding.
You see, the management of the funding, and I know the PS was, actually to me, he explained it very well. There's really nothing much you can take out of it. But what he was saying is, it's more like what we've talked about. I've told you about the fund that they implemented, even in Singapore. And what came out really is you need this missed, in fact, this is a subject. People are not trusting government in where they are putting their funding. But look at these conjavas. When government gives bonds, most of us, we run to get government bonds. Why don't we question the government that we can't trust them with our money? When we pay taxes for the government to build our roads, and we can see these roads, because we pay the government taxes before we see the road, but we see the road is built thereafter. We trust government, and this to me sometimes it's a shocker. We trust government in certain aspects, but you're telling me we can't trust them in others?
Okay, but the logic is, Gabriel, that we pay taxes, that again comes back in effect of services, healthcare, education, infrastructure that the Kenyan people get. But this is a contribution. You either get house at the end of it or get back the money.
And you had it.
And that's where the trust deficiency comes in.
You cannot, listen, you have it in 4 tiers, how you can get your money back. And I've had nearly all those questions. What happens if somebody dies? Your next of kin. I mean, it's written in black and white. You know, if you do not get your house, the PS explained very well, and the president has actually been sounding like a broken record, back to back to back to back to back. We have had, every time he chooses to speak, including the PS housing, he's saying this is not a tax, it's a contribution.
But it's still a deduction.
Let me say something before that.
You know, I'll get Dr. and then come to you, Javas.
Okay, yeah. I think with all genuity, I think first of all, over 50 million Kenyans cannot be wrong when something is not right. And as much as we want to tell the president that he's not naked when he's naked, I think first of all we have to divorce ourselves and our mindsets from the truth and the chaff. And the reason why I'm saying so is because personally I'm a very good fan of the president as a person, because I like his charisma, I like his self-driven, kind of demeanor. I like how he has come from, where he has come from and where he is. He's a huge motivating factor for some of us.
Well, what would you tell him as an advisor?
As an advisor, if I were an advisor, and which I would yearn to be one of his very soon, I think I would tell him very well that he need to look further and they need to consult widely. You need to also, give space, a bigger latitude for people to contribute in terms of their views, in terms of their, interest. Because when you look at the document, yes, taxes are painful, Abdi, I must tell you. And nobody likes being squeezed dry the way Kenyans are feeling right now. But going forward, I think, to me, we have to, first of all, understand that it's a fundamental right for us to contribute tax. And we have a duty and obligation as citizens of this country to contribute tax. Right. Because you can't expect the government to do everything for you, offer you security, offer you free health care, education, water, infrastructure, protect you and give you the dignity that you deserve as a person without, being obligated to do your tax bit. That for sure, we can't argue about that. But again, we also need to subject Kenyans in a manner that they also feel, as much as we are also contributing these taxes, we can see value for the money. And we also see what these taxes are doing. For example, when you go to Libya, Abdi, I'll tell you for sure, during Colonel Muammar Gaddafi's time, Libyans were having free housing and still today.
Free water, free electricity, free education.
Everything was free.
And money per kid.
Absolutely. And money in the pockets for the people and citizens as well. And that's something that, as much as the West, depicted Colonel Muammar Gaddafi as somebody who was a dictator, but to them he was a hero. And they came to realize that later when he passed on, when he died. But going forward, they could see where their taxes was going to. Also, as much as we'd want to say it's a communism sort of setup as compared to a democratic free market economy, but we also want to see the same. We want to see our shillings working for us. We want to see the infrastructure. We want to see the health care. We want to see the education being taken care of from that. Because if Kenyans were seeing value for their money, they wouldn't complain. And this is a precedent that has been set by the previous regimes, where their money has been, being carried by gunny sacks at night, by people doing catwalks. Is that what you heard? People stealing billions. 2 billion per day, that's not small money. People, ransacking all the institutions that they have been mandated, such as KEMSA, NYS 1, NYS 2. And we have been condoning all this, and we have been watching as citizens and say, oh my goodness, this is our money. When we are languishing in poverty, people in Kibera and the Korogosho living such kind of dignified lives, when all the monies they have been contributing through taxes is being taken away by people who are in the positions that they have been mandated by law to preserve and to protect those resources on their behalf. When they see that, they feel so bad. And I'm here saying that if we were able to see value for our money, if we were to see these shillings working for us, people will not be complaining about this. And again, we also have to understand the debate about the financial bill and the housing levy has come at a time when we have a highly heightened political temperatures in this country. If this was during the handshake time, if this financial bill and the housing levy issue were actually being discussed at that environment, trust me, Abdi, the heat will not be this kind of hot. We would be seeing maybe, a low-level kind of discussions, no hard punches being thrown here and there, politically speaking. But because we are seeing a situation where there is a huge rift in terms of the political differences being experienced today, that's why the debate is also hot, and that's why people are also being misinformed and giving the wrong information.
But Dr. Mutia, is it largely because of the current political climate in the country, or, may I point this to you, 3 million Kenyan salaried who experience deductions, NSSF, NHIF, plus this, if Parliament passes the Finance Bill 2023, then that totals up to 11.7% of their pay slip. Is it because of that which is the cause of all these concerns, or according to you, a political pressure from the opposition?
Two factors may come into play in this issue. First of all, I said from my opening statement that the president can gain more from a wider latitude of consultations as far as the frameworks of these two issues are concerned, the housing and the financing bill. Wider consultation in the sense that public participation is giving, you know, an edge to contribute. People are giving the
which is happening at the moment.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which is
more than 1,300 memorandums filed with the Finance and National Planning Committee. But when you talk about consultation,
yes,
then in your view, does the head of state need wider consultation on this?
I think,
from your understanding,
I think to me, it requires, you need to be a little bit patient with Kenyans. You need to be a little bit patient with the whole process. It doesn't need to hasten it, in the sense that it doesn't make it like, you know, leave a lot of dust in the eyes of the Kenyans. So to me, I think this consultation should be gradual and should also be taking place as we are talking right now. And I'm saying this because, Abdi, as I said before, if these discourses were happening at a time when there's an handshake, trust me, the heightened temperatures will be very low, that we don't even feel the discussions actually happening as they are doing right now. And because of the situation where we are, that's why we are finding, even supporting and advocating for some of the good changes within the bills, or even the housing levy, which to me is very good, because who would want to have a good house? Who would want to have a decent house?
Everyone needs a house.
Everybody needs a house. Even those who are supporting the other side of the political side, they also need a decent housing.
So according to Dr. Mutia, it has nothing to do with the current economic state of the country, which the president yesterday said was keeping him awake all night. And government officials.
Well, I would say that from the time that he took oath of office as president, he became public property. And every pronouncement of his affects every Kenyan, and including the territorial salubrity of Kenya. And that's why anything the president says is consequential. He is now the most consequential citizen in this country. That is why remarks that he made at a church in Umoja on a Sunday morning concerning the 3% housing levy has found its way in the finance bill 2023. It tells you that leaders have got a responsibility on their shoulders. Article 1, Sub-Article 4 of the Constitution provides that executive authority, which is, of course, derived from the people, is exercised at the national level in the presidency, headed by the president, and at the county level in the executive, headed by the governor. Now, what we need to do in terms of helping our leaders implement policies and decisions, first is to ensure that we encourage them not to engage in policy making by thorax. Thoraxical policy making, which does not encourage public participation, is bad. And I think it was good that the president even spoke to issues of public participation in his Madaraka Day remarks yesterday. Secondly, I think as Kenyans we're so much accustomed to red herrings, to which we are pointed by politicians nearly all the time. Now, right now, for example, at the risk of appearing that I want to take a position of public, government spokesperson, which I'm not, I would say this, that I think the government should communicate also quite effectively about some of the beneficial issues that are contained in the Finance Bill 2023. Removal, for example, of tax on human medicine importation and the cost of the taxation issues to do with setting up of vaccines in the country and veterinary services. How is that going to help in livestock sector, improvement, amelioration of medical services in the country? These things are critical. But politicians are pointing us on issues that, for example, are not holistic in nature about this. And that's why I said that I think with the benefit of retrospect about JF Kennedy in the US, asking questions during his inauguration that ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And I would segment it twice. One, what can you do for your country as a citizen? And what can you do for your country?
Pay taxes
as an elected leader. For example, look at the case of Nairobi County, where a young governor is trying to push for the issue of free meals in all public schools. And these are things that even politicians are not, trying to celebrate, and even Kenyan citizens. I heard Governor Sakaja yesterday speak to the issue of imploring parliamentarians, the 17 of them, and senators in Nairobi, to see how they can partner together with the county assembly, come up with legislation to get some public land and build new schools. I think this more innovative and encouraging kind of leadership that we need to encourage.
Thank you.
And that's why, even on the issue of the finance bill, I think I want to encourage citizens and leaders to read with a toothpick if necessary, line by line, about how and what is it that's in the finance bill, how impactful is it, and what is it that we need to maybe edit and amend, and either way, we must deal with it just this coming week.
Thank you.
Because we are coming to the tail end of the financial year.
Thank you. And Gabriel, I'll give you the final word. Okay.
You know, somebody,
I need to sample the
yeah. You know, somebody was telling, this housing thing is very difficult to explain.
Yeah.
I told him, it's not difficult to explain. What Dr. Mutia has said, he actually needs to get placement in this debate because it says it has become political. And that, to me, is the tragedy of it. Guess what? Former President Uhuru Kenyatta talked about housing. Yeah. You remember? He did 9,000. He did 9,000 units. Mm-hmm. What President William Ruto is trying to do is pushing it higher now to 250,000. Guess what? Honorable Raila Odinga himself has housing.
And Kibaki. There's the slum upgrading.
Yes, has about it in his manifesto. So somebody saying it's hard to explain. You see, the only thing left is
the issue about where the fund will be domiciled.
Yeah.
I think, as a lawyer, I would say that this is a legislative drafting issue.
Correct.
And it will be important for the drafters of the relevant enabling statute to consider, for example, do we need an authority to guide, to lead, to manage the fund? It's a legislative drafting issue. And that's why I think the PS Hinga should leave legal issues and legislative drafting issues out of engagement. If at all, for example, he has not put together that panel of drafters to guide in the drafting process. Okay,
and Gabriel, as you have mentioned, the former president on the 28th of December 2018 talked about it during an interview with a panel of journalists
in Mombasa,
Mombasa County.
Yes.
The former Prime Minister had it in his manifesto.
Yeah. Totally.
And so is it happening. Now, the constant element, may I say this with passion, is that we will hold them to account, whoever will want to.
Of course.
That's our business.
This one, I agree.
Here on the broadcast, this is what we are saying on the hashtag Daybreak. The SMS code is 22422. At Citizen TV Kenya and at Ayub Abdikadir. And you Kenyans, of course, are so passionate about it. The president talked about you and your place in the constitution, which he said is very integral. Evans Wanyela once says, as much as the government wants to collect as much tax as possible, the president should seal all the loopholes of corruption.
That's true. Absolutely.
Bobotieno Owino says, when incoming Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu turned to painful path of economic recovery by doing away with subsidies, at that moment I realized President William Ruto is heading Kenya to the right direction, as DP Rigathi Gachagua said yesterday. J.M. Musoma says Kenya is among progressive countries in terms of education, health, fundamental freedom and human rights, but among the worst in terms of integrity. Our problems are no longer poverty, disease and ignorance, but corruption, tribalism, bad governance and the high cost of living. Okelo Mwalimu says the president has done very well on communication front. His speeches have been eye-catchers to date. Kudos to his press team. However, he has done close to nothing on delivery of pledges made in his spectacular speeches, save for the Hustler Fund, which he uses as a sweetener. Kisi Philip says the president is talking about ethnic balkanization while he is busy making appointments that seem to lean more on certain tribes as compared to others. Isn't good leadership manners. Don't preach water and drink wine, he says. Sir_Nixon says Singapore made a hard decision of eradicating corruption, and to date, Singapore is generally perceived as one of the lowest in the world in terms of corruption index. One of the main reasons it has succeeded in affordable housing to its citizens. Engineer Lazaro says the president should work on his previous campaign pledges before issuing new ones. Kenyans already fatigued with too much hot air promises. Otherwise, at 60 years since independence, we are still battling negative ethnicity, nepotism and selfish enrollments. Peter Gesura 89 says the issue of housing the government should not impose to Kenyans. Kenyan workers took loans from banks and circles to build their own houses. Let it be voluntary. And Willis is here, I see. It's on a Friday. Thank you, Javas Bigambo, for making time, governance and political commentator. Thank you, Gabriel Muduma, for your call yesterday, though I wasn't in Embu, for a cup of uji. Your time.
Uji, you need uji. You need that.
Certainly.
Oh, totally.
Thank you.
Totally.
And Dr. Brian Mutia, an advocate of the High Court, commentator on governance and political issues. So interesting. Willis is on time on Friday at 8 a.m. Thanks for waking up with us here on the broadcast, and many thanks for watching. Good morning.